I made some unconventional choices when I started out my career at Google. Here are the 5 lessons I learned that saved me years of stress and frustration. The first one is play the long game because life is a marathon, not a sprint. Now, this applies to your career within the same company or if you're looking for jobs every 2 years. I know that's the norm now, and everyone feels like they can progress either in their career ladder or financially if they job hop every 2 years. And sure, there might be some truth to that, but money isn't the only factor. When you stay in a team or a company for a long time, you build relationships, you build depth, and you build trust, which allows you to expand the opportunities that you can get, which you may not have gotten had you moved from one team to another every couple of years. Now, if the team culture is toxic and they don't appreciate or value you, that's a different thing. But if you're just moving for the sake of moving or because you're going to get that 10% bump in pay, I would say it's worth taking a pause and thinking about how you can achieve what you want to achieve, which is expanding your scope and skills and being more valued by taking on different projects within the same team. It will give you a familiar environment to work within that will allow you to gain more skills, which you can apply to your next role. Not only do you gain new skills, but you also gain influence, which I would argue is even more impactful. You can go from just executing to actually making meaningful decisions that impact the future of the company or the goals that you've decided on. And that can have a big impact on your sense of meaning and purpose, which really truly drives us to do our best work. If you don't feel fulfilled or if you don't feel like you are driving impact at work, it is very hard to work incessantly and to drive results that make meaningful change in the company. Once you've built these relationships and gained these skills, you won't be in a hurry to take the next opportunity available. You have the opportunity to continue growing in the same team or in the same company and only take an opportunity if it makes sense for the next step in your career. And that means that you're being intentional about your career rather than impulsive. As for me, I stayed on one team for 8 years, and you might think that that was a bad decision and that resulted in stagnation of my growth and my career. But it's far from the reality. In those 8 years, I worked on almost every different function of the business. I got to understand how a business unit functions. And that was key for me because I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to pursue my own thing. And so the learning that I had in those 8 years has been invaluable to me as I'm on my entrepreneurship journey. Lesson number 2 is building what I called a freedom fund. Now, I wish I had done this sooner and I wish I had educated myself sooner on this, but learning the basics of finances and how they work, what retirement means, what comes out of your paycheck, what are the different line items, that is incredibly important so that you are in control of your future. If you just live paycheck to paycheck and don't think about, maybe a rainy day when you lose your job, or maybe like me, you want to pursue entrepreneurship and now you have the luxury of pursuing the goals in your business that you want rather than chasing the next dollar, that kind of freedom has to be intentional. Now, this is not a financial advice channel, and I'm sure you all know the importance of compound interest. So investing early, saving up for your retirement early, all of that is really important. But the key here is when you have that financial cushion, you're going to make career decisions strategically and not out of desperation. Lesson number 3, your career is not your identity. It was very hard for me not to think of myself as a Google employee and have that be my entire identity. It's the only job I've ever had, and I spent 13 years. I grew up in the company. So it was an incredibly difficult task, but I had to make a deliberate effort to have a life outside of work. I wanted to think of myself as someone who has other hobbies, other skills outside of my life at Google. Your hobbies, your relationships, and your well-being are not distractions. They're actually the fuel for a long, sustainable career. Now, when I was working full-time at Google, I had a pop-up restaurant in San Francisco. I would work Monday to Friday at Google, and then Saturdays I would have this pop-up, which I would plan for 3 weeks, have 25 people come over, cook a 3 to 4 course meal with beverage pairings for them. It was a lot of work, but it really helped me transition into the career I wanted to have in the future. The other important part of this is that I really invested in my health. Living in a city like San Francisco, where everybody's health conscious, helped me do that, but I can't stress enough the importance of that. Now that I'm in my 30s, the habits I built in my 20s are really carrying me through, and I can see the impact of the small micro habits I built in my 20s, in my 30s now. The third piece, which I was deliberate about, was relationships. I knew I wanted to be with somebody that I cared about. I wanted to have a life partner, and I invested time and effort in dating in my 20s to find that person. I had to go on a lot of bad dates, and there were many disappointments before I found my now husband, Ross. However, being intentional about going on these dates helped me build a support system for myself when I wanted to make a career change, or if and when things go wrong in my life, I know that I had someone to lean on. And the foundation of that is really built as you're building the foundation of your career, in my opinion. And this takes me to the fourth lesson, that your biggest career investment isn't your job. Along with your life partner, you also need to invest time and effort into your friendships, into your family, developing a community, so that you have a support system in place. Your job is not everything, and the people that burn out the fastest are the ones who don't have an identity and support system outside of work. This doesn't mean that you can't have work friends. Some of the people that I met at work are some of my closest friends now. But what matters is whether you dedicate time and effort into nurturing those relationships. You can't think that just because I have a 60-hour work week, I can just ignore all of the other relationships in my life. And maybe that's okay for a week, but if it continues for months and years, then maybe you won't have that support system that you really hoped for. So being intentional about investing in relationships outside of work is really key. The people in your life that you invest in, not only will they support you when you need them, but they will also give you honest feedback and help you grow, which is key if you want to have a long, fulfilling, sustainable career. Lesson number 5 is don't be afraid of change. I started off studying botany in college, wanting to be a botanist and a researcher. And then I finally got hired at Google, and I thought, okay, 2 years and I'm going to move into environmental policy. While I was doing that, I thought I wanted to be a bartender, and I applied to Cordon Bleu to be a pastry chef. And then I moved to the US and I fell in love with Indian food. And I started doing these pop-up restaurants that I referred to earlier in San Francisco. And that became a big part of who I was becoming and how I was embracing my identity. Don't be afraid to evolve and change. You're not one thing. Your interests, your career, who you are as a person can change in the future. There were many, many raised eyebrows, and people questioned why I was leaving my fulfilling and successful career at a company like Google to pursue something like cooking or being my own boss or being an entrepreneur. All of those things, there are so many risks associated with it. it. And there are still people that question it. And I'm by no means at the end of my entrepreneurship journey where I'm incredibly successful and still building. However, the thing that really helped me was embracing the change and embracing the evolution that was happening inside me instead of fighting against it. You are not defined by your first job or even the first 5 years of your career or even the first decade like me. You can change and evolve and be the person that you want to be. Which lesson resonated with you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like the video and subscribe to my channel.